Hi everyone, and welcome to this special edition of the Climate of Sport podcast with me, Claire Poole. I am delighted to be back with you and bringing you a really interesting session today with some brilliant colleagues and leaders to talk about sustainability in football, specifically a European project that we have been part of for the past 30 months. So the project we want to talk to you about today is Free Kicks. This is a project that was co-funded by the European Union and ran from the February of 2023 through to November of 2025, right now for anyone who is listening in November 2025. The idea of this project was to support football's transition towards the uptake of leading-edge environmental management practices and sustainable organisational models, as well as help support climate-conscious and environmentally friendly behaviour patterns within football fans and football stakeholders. It was an incredible project which brought together a number of leading partners, including Real Betis, FC Porto, Malmo FF, Romanian Football Federation, Racing Football Club, European Football Clubs, which was formerly ECA, recently rebranded, and ourselves at Sport Positive as the comms and dissemination partner. Just a quick disclaimer at the start of this episode that this project was funded by the European Union, but views and opinions expressed are those of the authors, i.e. ourselves who are speaking today, only, and do not necessarily reflect those of the European Union or EACEA. Neither the European Union nor the granting authority can be held responsible for them. So with that in mind, the project is nearing a close now, and we wanted to be able to share some insights and learnings with you all that hopefully will help you on your own journey in sport and sustainability. I'm delighted to be joined on the pod today by three brilliant guests who I'm going to come to shortly. These people are changing the game for sustainability in sport. So I'm going to be joined by Rafa Muela Pastor, who's the Foundation General Manager of Real Betis Balompié, Teresa Santos, who's the Sustainability Manager at FC Porto, and Alessio Novi, who's the Sustainability Specialist and Researcher at Scuola Superiore. I've ruined that, but I'm going to keep that in the edit, Alessio. Scuola Superiore Sant'Anna. You can tell me how terrible my accent was. I'm getting a thumbs up for listeners of the pod, but we all know I absolutely destroyed that, so can only apologise. We're going to come to these brilliant guests shortly, but meanwhile, I just want to highlight what you're going to get out of this episode. For us, it was about coming together and collaborating to drive progress in these areas forward, and also make sure that a lot of these learnings come through to you as well. And that's what we're going to hear from our speakers about today. However, I just want to go through some stats with you, which sounds boring, but it's not going to be boring, because I want to tell you what we achieved over the past 30 months as part of the Free Kicks project, which was a lot. So 4 of our football partners became EMAS certified, which is absolutely massive. And Alessio is going to talk to us a little bit about that later on. 4 life cycle assessments were completed that gave us within the industry hard data on the environmental footprint of a single football match, which is incredibly helpful, obviously, as we look at the impact of football and also when the climate crisis deepens, how we can expect impacts on football to change. So really, really great to get hard data that you can all benefit from out of the project. We worked really hard on the comms and dissemination through all of our partners. We had over 63,000 impressions on social media. There was over 70 articles written about the project. Over 4,000 people were reached through events and conferences. 300,000 views happened of our club's athletes and fan vox pops, where they spoke about environmental sustainability. And the biggest number, which is incredible, is through awareness-raising banners and images shown over 30 times in football stadia during matches by our partners, reached nearly 6.5 million people. So the direct and indirect reach of the efforts of this project were just under 7 million people, which is absolutely incredible when we think about environmental sustainability and talking about these efforts with football. So that's enough about me. You're sick and tired of listening to me. We want to come to our brilliant guests to hear more about their insights on the project, because there's so much to think about and learn from. So just as a heads up, we're going to chat to Rafa first about how to raise awareness and visibility of environmental sustainability efforts. Then we're going to hear from Teresa about the journey through certifications and learnings you can take from them. And then we're going to hear from Alessio to share the overarching outcomes and the learnings that you can take on your own journey. whatever stage you're at in terms of amplifying environmental sustainability through football or through sport. So let's get going. Rafa, are you with me?
Yes, of course.
Wonderful. So welcome to the podcast, first of all. We've got a little bit of interference on your mic, but hopefully we'll see how it goes. I think, oh, this is better. Perfect. Fabulous. So first of all, welcome to the pod. It's fantastic to have you as part of the podcast here, and obviously played such a huge role in Free Kicks project as well. You've just heard and you knew already how many people we've reached with the project. And obviously Real Betis have your own brand, Forever Green. You're very used to communicating far and wide on sustainability. But these are really impressive numbers, aren't they? So why, tell us a little bit about some of the communications you did and tell us why you think the project's been so well received.
Well, the first thing, Claire, I think is that all these numbers were achieved because of the teamwork we all have done, led by you and by Sport Positive and by Naila during all these 3 years. And after that, we may say that thanks to Forever Green to have a specific panels to disseminate all the environmental topics that we work to inspire about what we all can do against climate change. It's a privilege. It's a huge opportunity for us, precisely to send all the efforts that we have around, and for sure we believe that all the efforts done by all the partners in the project are very well focused, very well planned, and with a strong passion and commitment to fight against climate change. I think whenever and wherever you express in terms of dissemination, if you really believe what you are expressing and what you are telling the people, I think it gets more successful in terms of reaching the people. Another key topic, I think, or key element for this is that we have many people working with this passion and putting their talent at the disposition of fighting against climate change. And it's important to have this talent, this creativity, because there are so many information around that we really need to highlight somehow all the content and all the messages that we want to spread among the partners and among the population in general coming from the project.
Fantastic. That's such great insights. I think the being authentic is so important. As you've said, we know that especially in sport, fans are going to call you if you're talking about things and it doesn't come from a very honest and transparent and authentic place. So this is a great insight. And having the resource in place, of course, is critical. And that being creative is a really interesting insight to cut through as well. So really, really, really interesting. We always think about communications with fans and the wider, participants or fans of football or of sport. But obviously, Free Kicks helped raise awareness and communicate internally to stakeholders as well, didn't it? And helped, even as a club, very committed to this area. In what ways did you sort of connect with stakeholders around the project or internal staff members, employees, colleagues? Like, how did the project help you continue those discussions internally communicating?
Well, I would say that thanks to all the inputs coming from the colleagues and the other partners, and because of the different outputs that we had to do according to the plan of the project, was an excuse to do things, to mobilize ourselves. And that, of course, involves to have conversations with the stakeholders, with fans, with providers, with employees, with all of them. Maybe because any of the actions, it was about governance. So this involves to talk about environmental performance with our board of directors. This way, you have the chance to disseminate the message to increase their awareness raising, because maybe they have some concepts, but they didn't, the board of directors of any other head of any other department, they weren't so aware about their impact or their possibilities to improve their impact or to decrease their impact in terms of environmental impact. So I think it's crucial to have these honest conversations, always respecting the position of each one, but also trying to be really clear in terms of the problem that we all have as society with climate change, and the opportunity that we all have in each from each stakeholder to uh, improve the way they were doing things, and also really important to make them aware that this is a trend all around the world, and if they don't get into the movement, for sure they will miss opportunities, and maybe they will be out of the picture. So having these conversations, I'm sure it's part of the journey of the of Free Kicks project, and it's part of the sustainability journey that we all have to face.
Yeah, I love that. I love the excuse to speak to people internally about this, because of these external commitments and communications is a really, really, really helpful insight as well. And I think as part of those communications, some of the different comms efforts you undertook were these athlete vox pops, we call them, campaign of hearing from your athletes on these issues. So from Hector Bellerin and from Nuria Ligerio Fernandez, social media campaigns, these in-stadia visuals, as well as these in-person events with fans and colleagues. Do you think it is helpful, of course, to have athletes speaking out in an authentic way, but did that land internally as well? Feeding in from the conversation about talking about it internally, when your athletes are interested to speak out on this, does that help drive things and ensure more of this great effort happens internally with stakeholders as well?
Of course, Claire. It's really important, and for us, it's a privilege to have someone so involved in general terms. I would say in social actions, but very specifically in environmental uh, activity, because he's not only an ambassador for the fans, what of course it is, and in fact we take advantage of him, and we spread the message of forever green and of free kicks thanks to him. But also I would say in the dress room, of course having him there, making this green noise with the other players and having these same conversations with them, it's something that give us a strong energy for us to keep on counting with them, because they are crucial allies. They are role models, and when we want to spread any kind of advice or any kind of situation that we are facing because of climate change, having them on board is the most the most important speak louder that we can have, and this is something that, or at the same time, of course, we believe is a strong responsibility, and we need to take advantage of it.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. And I think this is really interesting. I think your earlier point about authenticity comes back. It only lands when the athletes are authentic, aren't they, within this messaging? But we can see from the stats of the project that Nyla collated, across the entire project, we had 65,000 impressions on social media, which is incredible for this, considering, it's just individual efforts from partners, but then 300,000 views of the athlete and fan vox pop, showing that people are so interested in what our athletes and footballers have to say. So if we can, if people can mobilize their athletes or players around these topics, we know that really helps cut through. So that's fantastic. My last question to you, Rafa, is, have you got any advice for other clubs who are building their own branded sustainability initiatives from Free Kicks, but also from Forever Green? You've already given us some great top tips and nuggets there around the authenticity, the transparency, and that. But is there any other advice you can give people who are maybe starting to think about activating and communicating around this topic?
Yes, I would say that I always say that we need to do things. We need to do things to disseminate what we have done or what our colleagues, our friends, our other organizations that we are collaborating with, they are doing. And having this network and having this proactivity to do things is the first step always to disseminate or to communicate anything. And if you think and if you do it with passion and with this commitment, I'm sure that at some point you will reach your goals in terms of any social responsibility that you may have in relation with environmental topic or any other, I would say.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much. That's wonderful, Rafa. Thank you so much for the insights. And hang on, we're going to come to a quick fire round actually at the end. So hang on where you are. We'll be coming back to you very shortly. But in the interim, we're going to hear from Teresa and Alessio. So Teresa, I want to come to you next. In terms of Rafa's given us loads of brilliant insights about communication efforts there, which is fantastic. And not to say that FC Porto didn't also do an incredible job as a project partner around the communication side, and vice versa, that Betis achieved loads on the certification side. But that's what I want to chat to you about, to get your insights about certification, because you achieved 2 during the project, didn't you? The EMAS and then also the Green Heart certification. So I'd love to hear from you about the role and importance of these certifications for FC Porto, and then share a little bit with us, if you can, about who had to be involved to make them happen. How much extra work was it? Tell us a little bit, if people are considering this, what they might expect.
Hi, Claire, and hi, everyone. So, as you know, since 2007, we have had an environmental management system in place. So, when the project started, the certification process wasn't entirely new to us. In fact, it was more about consolidating the work that we have been doing over the years. So during this journey, we achieved a really very important certification, the EMAS, as you know, a voluntary European mechanism that promotes the continuous improvement of organizations' environmental performance. It requires organizations to implement effective environmental management systems and also to communicate their results transparently to the public and the stakeholders. So for us, a really important one, because we can communicate more transparently with our stakeholders. The second one was a national recognition, Coração Verde, that highlights the organizations for the adopting and demonstration of structured environmental practices.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. It's great to understand a little bit more. And you mentioned there that this is not a new mindset for FC Porto. You've been doing the work, obviously, for a long time, and this consolidated around these certifications. But tell me about when you were going through the certification process. Did it change anything operationally or mindsets from colleagues? Was it a lot of work to bring people along with perhaps data you needed to collect, or the mindset was already there, but did it help focus thoughts and ideas? Did it change mindsets, or did you have to think differently operationally?
I think the most important, because as I told you, we have these certifications, but the scope of the certifications is different, because for example, in EMAS was the stadium and the Dragão Arena, our arena. For ISO 40001 was all the facilities. So for us, I think it was the focus was how to implement this certification in the different facilities. So sometimes we need to focus just in one facility or two, and in the other certification we need to have a broad vision. So for us, we need to have a management tool to implement. So the management tool is really important to achieve this certifications. So it was really important for us these achievements.
It's great because I think the transparency you've mentioned comes up again, which is the same sort of a different lens of what Rafa was saying about the authenticity of communications. It's the same. To be authentic in that communications, the management tools that you mentioned enable you to have that transparency so that when you communicate, what we would say in English is like you're not marking your own homework. You're working with external organizations and you are getting that accreditation, which is fantastic. So I guess then just to finish, you've been going through these certifications for a while. Is there anything you wish you'd known 3 years ago? Do you have any advice for clubs starting to think like, should we be going for EMAS or should we be starting looking at external certification? Do you have any insights that might help them think, oh, I wish I'd have known this 3 years ago?
So I think there was a clear reinforcement of the importance of having a robust and well-structured environment management system, as I told you before. One of the main lessons was understanding how this system allows us to branch out and integrate different certifications, each with its own scope and requirements, as I told you. So the main lesson was learning to optimize our different systems, ensuring they will all work in an integrated and complementary way. It's a demanding process, but it gives us a much more strategic view of sustainability within the club.
Perfect. That efficiency is so key, isn't it, in terms of some of this work, because it's so much saving can be made by going through these management tools and systems and making sure those efficiencies in place. So that's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing a bit about the journey that you've been on, Teresa, and your wider work. We know FC Porto are doing a huge amount of work in this area, very committed and very strong. So fantastic to hear more from you about the certification program. Thank you. And then last but not least, Alessio, I want to come to you. And we've heard there from Rafa and Teresa, got great insights about the wins and the insights of these of the project of free kicks from the partner perspective. But Sant'Anna Pisa were the coordinators. You were bringing us all together and you were leading on this. So for you, from your perspective, what were the key findings of the project that you hope football, yes, but also maybe even the wider sport industry can take away from this work that these incredible partners have done over the past few years?
Well, first of all, thank you, Claire, and everybody for the question and for this possibility to speak about the project. And thanks to the other partners, Rafa, Naila, and Teresa. So to answer to your question, I will start from the fact that I think the industry, at least at the European level, could take advantage of European fundings. So that's one of the key takeaways, because what we notice as universities that many sport organizations in Europe don't really know, the fact that they can get funded to work on sustainability topics. So maybe free kicks has been like a way to understand these opportunities. So there are different funding programs. The Erasmus Plus was the one which funded the free kicks project, and it's one of the most important ones. So one of the key takeaways is to apply for this kind of projects within this funding program, but also through other funding programs. Talking more about the project itself, I think it was very interesting to see how we could work on governance topics, in the sense that you talk about, for example, EMAS. So we're talking about certifications, but when we talk about certifications, we talk about governance tools, management and governance tools. So how to help like clubs in getting some structures within their departments at the organizational level to implement some actions. No? So one of the key takeaways here is the fact that clubs and sport organizations, football organizations, or sport organizations in general should work on these topics. EMAS is just an example. And regarding this, we also work as one of the main outputs on, let's say, sustainable procurement guideline, which gives me like the opportunity to say that we have several outputs. If we refer to governance, I think an interesting one is the procurement guidelines. So how sport organization can integrate green criteria, green considerations at procurement level. But we don't have just that deliverable, but we have many others. So another takeaway is to have a look at what we did and try to get, the main lessons in order to improve in your organizations in general, or just to have some ideas or, considerations. Then obviously we work on two main topics, which are EMAS and life cycle assessments. We're very happy, as you said, to have involved 4 different clubs in obtaining and getting certified with the EMAS scheme. So, we basically open somehow with this project, this certification to the football world, to the sport world somehow. So our, let's say, objective somehow is to push also other organizations to achieve this certification, looking at the partners of the Free Kicks, looking at Teresa, looking at Rafa, looking at Malmo and the Romanian Football Federation. So let's see if others can indeed imitate those who lead by example, which are the partners here. And then talking about life cycle assessments, usually I think the sport world, the football, especially the football one, which is among the most advanced sports sectors, is working a lot on carbon footprint. Here, a key takeaway is the use of life cycle assessments as some methodology to work on carbon footprint, because there are many different methodologies. But if you ask like a scientist which methodology is the best, they will always tell you life cycle assessments rather than other methodologies. So the idea is to go towards like a common path on a methodological point of view. But then by using life cycle assessments, you can also extend your view from carbon to other environmental impacts. So, and that's something that we worked on, and we would like the industry to take into consideration, to have a look at other environmental impacts like water footprint, the use of resources, biodiversity impacts, etc. And life cycle assessment can help you in that.
Wonderful. Think beyond carbon. Yeah, there was a huge amount of really interesting findings from all the life cycle assessments. And I'll share the website, and we'll put it in the show notes for the podcast as well, for the website where all of these resources are on there, and they'll remain there for a number of years to go and have a look at. But when, to Alessio's point with the life cycle assessment, we can become very focused on carbon, but actually the environmental footprint is so far beyond that, and loads of really interesting insights there. So thanks, Alessio. That was so comprehensive and so fantastic about those insights. And even just the simple one of remembering that European Union funding is there. Another one of our partners, Florin Sari from the Romanian Football Federation, mentioned this at our final conference last month, saying, to go for some of these, the funding there really enabled the Romanian Football Federation to go through these processes. They may not have done it otherwise. So if you are in Europe and you are thinking about doing this work and you don't have the resource, to Alessio's point, see what funding is available. That's just such a helpful, practical tip, Alessio. So that's fab. So you've mentioned loads of stuff there. You mentioned governance. So I think maybe I know the answer to this question, but has this project or the learnings given you ideas for future research of like what's next? Not to put more work at your door straight away. What are you thinking?
Well, we actually have like many ideas. We need to like frame them in the right direction, because usually you get many, especially I get a lot of ideas and then I I don't do that much as I would like. So now I'm trying to focus on some ideas. But actually, we would like to valorize from a scientific point of view the results of the project. For example, the life cycle assessments can be something that should be valorized. So we are trying to look to look for the proper lens, on how to look at that, because we also need to shape, these results in a scientific way, which is not always that easy. But then we also got other ideas in terms of the life cycle assessments are from carbon to environmental footprint somehow. But then we also got other ideas looking at the different structures of partners in terms of governance, because we had clubs, but we also had federations, and every club and federation basically has a different internal structure. No organization is equal to another one. So we would like to go more in depth on how, on which are the basically processes behind good governance and good environmental management within clubs and federations. So I think a stream of research would be in that direction. And obviously, Free Kicks gave us some ideas. But the Free Kicks also gave us ideas in terms of project writing. So now we're going to deliver, to apply for other fundings in next year. And we got a few projects in our mind, also thanks to the results of Free Kicks.
Wonderful. But lastly, again, the same question as I posed to Rafa and Teresa. Football clubs, sports organisations looking at life cycle assessments, EMAS, communicating more, what small piece of advice can you give them as they look to either start this journey or continue and move into some of these more specific areas?
Well, I would give a general recommendation. I think certifications are nice, but they should be somehow internalized. Mm-hmm. And that means to be somehow ready to take the most out of these certifications. So a general recommendation would be to start working, start defining responsibilities and roles within your organization, like appointing a person in charge of these topics, because having a certification but not knowing how to manage it is somehow, yes, you have it, but then it's not that useful for the organization. Okay, really so I think certification are nice when they can make a difference, because they are supposed that they were created with this purpose. So first, before going into certification, having an idea of the person in charge of environmental topics. We're talking about environmental management, so I'm not talking about sustainability management, but still the idea is the same. So appointing a person, understanding the people within the organization that can work on these topics, even though they are from different departments or functions within the organization, because we know that environmental and sustainability management is somehow transversal within different functions. And then I will start mapping what there is inside the organization. So what the organization already does, because this basically creates the base for the organization to go towards the certification. So if your starting point is high, then you get a certification. This brings you even higher. But otherwise, the certification maybe might not be that useful. So I will start from general recommendation and then, try to understand the situation within the organization, and then afterwards to get the certifications.
Really practical and helpful. Thank you, Alessio. That's amazing. So just to finish off the pod, I want to do a quick fire round to finish. I love a quick fire round. So I'm going to come to you also. I'll do it in order of the way we've spoken. So Rafa, Teresa, Alessio, and then I'm going to share my answers as well, because, we were involved with the project. So Rafa, I'll come to you first. I want you all to tell me one word to describe your journey through the Free Kicks project. What's one word you would use?
I always say that, but collaboration and maybe mutual support.
Nice. Collaboration and mutual support. That's 3 words, but I'm gonna let.
Sorry.
We're gonna, we're chill, we're relaxed. I'll let you, unless Teresa wanted one of those as well, and then you might have to share. Teresa, what do you say?
Another one, enriching.
Enriching. I love that. Alessio?
Entertaining.
It's
Because I had fun.
a good one.
I liked it.
Lots of inside jokes. So mine is people. The same, I think. I get more words because it's my podcast. Mine is people because I think this project has reminded me that like these amazing things can be achieved, but what sits at the heart of everything is really, really passionate and purposeful people who really care. And I don't think a lot of this happens without them. So I use loads of words, Rafa. So you're okay. You're okay. The next one, what's one concept or learning you're going to take from this project into your future work? Rafa, it's over to you.
Well, I think continuous improvement, it's a concept that will stay in all our process. Thanks to our EMAS certification that we got, thanks to the project and thanks to the mutual support we all have had in the project.
Love it. Is that?
Also, Rafa told the collaboration before, and I agree. And I think for me also, the concept is in this case also collaboration is a good word, because with this project we share our experience, we learn each other. So collaboration is really important, and it's a great output from this project.
I love it. Thank you, Alessio.
Having the right partners is key for a successful European project.
Great. Do you want to expand or do you want to leave it at that?
And then
He's leaving it at that. Hands in the air, listeners. Hands in the air, leaving it at that. Okay, so what I took away of learning was something we already know, but a reminder about how important data is, because the life cycle assessments that were done through the project for 3 football clubs in Europe and 1 in Argentina were so different in different ways. So like we generalize about the carbon footprint of a single football match, and a reminder that when you do that data, even with sports organizations you think are very similar and might end up the same, the data can be very different. So not to presume things was a good reminder for me for this project. The next question I'm going to come to you with, Rafa, is did you have a most surprising moment of the project?
Yeah, I would say that was when I realized that our colleagues in the facilities department were passionate about the results of the EMAS audit and all the process. At the beginning, it was really far and really like, okay, what are you going to tell me about this more work for us? But at the end of the day, it was they were involved and I feel like they were happy to be part of the team that were behind.
Oh, fantastic. That's a brilliant surprising one. What about you, Teresa? Did you have a surprising moment?
Also, maybe the EMAS certification, the communication about that, because we were the first club, and I was surprised how much we spoke about that. So for me, it's a surprising moment.
Yes, love that. And Alessia, what was yours?
Well, from a project point of view, like a surprising moment was when we realized that we will achieve 4 EMAS certifications, because actually we declared 3, and I have to say that 3 EMAS certification in an European project of this type, it seemed a lot to us when we wrote the project down. So we were like, okay, we put 3, but maybe that's too much, we are too ambitious. So when we realized that we went for 4, well, actually that was a wow moment. Then from a personal point of view, I'm a football fan, but I'm not working like in a sport organization. So a wow moment was visiting the stadiums during the project meetings.
I love that. Well, yeah, it's personal and professional, isn't it? That's amazing. And I think I think that is maybe another insight to your earlier answer of working with the right partners, that you've overachieved because of the passion and the purpose and the engagement of the partners involved. Mine, of course, from a comms perspective, is that indirectly, we reach nearly 7 million people with this from our perspective from comms and dissemination, which is down to the clubs and the partners and the output. But I think if you had asked me in February 2023 how we were going to do on comms, I never would have said, I think we're probably going to get to eyeballs in front of about 7 million eyeballs. I would never have said that. So that to me was a very happy surprise. And then my last question to you all is if, reflecting on everything you've shared so far, if you could see one change with an environmental sustainability in sport within the next few years, what would you like to see that would be a change and progress? Rafa, I'll come to you again first.
Well, I would say that I would love to have the same feeling and commitment of this continuous improvement and like this community awareness about we all need to do things and we all need to work on reducing our impact in our planet. So, and I believe we are in the way, maybe not so intensely as we should, but at some point, everyone in 5 years or so, everyone will be aware about that this is a challenge for all.
Absolutely. Thank you. Teresa?
It will be for sustainability to be fully integrated into the strategy and the culture of the clubs, because at this moment, most of us is some initiatives and not belong to the strategy. So for the future, this is fun.
This is a great one. I hope for this too. And Alessio, what about you?
Well, actually, mine is very similar to Teresa's one. I would go for the internalization and standardization of environmental governance in sport. We have different internalization and standardization levels within the sport industries. Football is most likely is one of the most advanced, but there is not just football. There are many different sports, and they are not the same level. So I will go for, standardization of the level of good governance that every sport organization should have.
Fantastic. And mine is I would love for environmental sustainability to be a non-negotiable on board agendas in every sport organisation. I think if you have the mindset of the leadership, we know if that's right, then everything else becomes a lot easier. And often environmental sustainability can be seen as a nice to have, not a need to have. So having that non-negotiable on a board agenda, not slipping off, would be what I'd love to see in the next 5 years. So many fantastic insights from our incredible speakers there. This has been a special episode of the Climate of Sport podcast, and we were talking about the Free Kicks project, which is now just coming from an end. I think there's so many great insights to focus on from our speakers today. I think the value of coming together around key efforts is really clear from these projects, that funding is available, that when it comes to communications being authentic, having resource in place and being creative is really important. Having transparency, which governance and certification can help with, having a strong methodology in place and optimizing and working in the most efficient ways. So many great insights for us to take away from the project, as well as a huge reach, which benefits the project and the partners, but also I think benefits sport and football more broadly, as well as these topics are more socialised in the domain with athletes, with fans and with other stakeholders as well. So I'd love to extend a great big thanks to Rafa and Teresa and Alessio for joining us today and for your insights to share with our community. And just to remind you all that the Free Kicks website will be live for 2 more years. There is a huge amount of resources on there that can help you on your journey, from documents, from reports, from life cycle assessments, articles, webinars. So much content to get you going on your journey. The website's www.free-kicks.eu. So huge thanks to Rafa, Teresa and Alessio for their insights. Thanks to you for listening to this special episode of the Climate of Sport podcast. And we'll be back in early 2026 for a new series. For now, from all of us, bye!